Okay, in this podcast, we're going to talk about the OJ Simpson trial, which in 1994, it did start in 1994, but the actual trial itself didn't really get rolling until 1995. But it was really, it really changed the nation, and that's no understatement there. But it was the trial of the century, and I guess that you would say the biggest trial before that would have been the Manson trial, the Charles Manson trial. And I wasn't around for that, so I don't even really remember it. Of course, I know about it, but I wasn't around to experience it. But it certainly was swept the nation. And I guess before that, you would say the Charles Lindbergh kidnapping, when his son was kidnapped and murdered. That was that probably before that. That was the trial of the century. So those are the three big ones that sort of stand out to me. But the OJ one, and most pundits will tell you that one surpasses them all and became the trial of the century. And I can remember back in 1994, I was 24 years old then, and I just remember how quickly, I think that was the thing that surprised me the most, how quickly this thing swept the nation. It was like it was the biggest media frenzy I've ever seen. I remember they would show some of these overhead pictures of like the courtroom, the courthouse, and you would just see all these TV trucks and reporters. I mean, it was absolutely the most insane thing I've ever seen, and it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. Every day, some new piece of information came out, and of course, initially, you just heard that it was OJ's wife and this other person who we now know is Ronald Goldman. We didn't know that then, but this unknown male was dead. They were slaughtered horribly, by the way, horrible deaths. And that was all you knew. And you knew it was OJ's wife. And where was OJ? Well, I believe he was in Chicago or something at a Hertz gathering. But that was all you knew. And at that point, nobody really knew who did it. But as those days kind of went, started getting past it, I think it was 4 days later, they held Nicole's funeral, and OJ was there by that time, though. So there were several leaks. I remember there were leaks, and some of the evidence was starting to point pretty heavily at OJ. They had, of course, recovered an infamous glove at his house at the Rockingham address that matched a glove that was left back at Nicole's house at the Bundy address. That was, of course, the big infamous glove, and it would be a huge source of controversy even today. And we'll talk more about that. But so that was found, blood drops. There was a whole blood trail that basically led from Nicole's house all the way to OJ's house. So there was a lot of incriminating evidence sort of pointing to OJ. And that was the sort of shocking thing to me at the time, because OJ, to me, was I just had the highest respect for him. I would say that he was really kind of that cool ex-NFL player that was in all these Hertz commercials. He was on the Monday Night Football as a sideline reporter. He was just all over the place in the sports world and even in commercials. There were people who even knew OJ, even if they didn't know him as a football player. You're like, oh yeah, that guy in the Hertz commercials. That I think in some respects that might have even made him more world famous. So the whole case was pretty shocking, how it was developing. That how could OJ really? How could it be OJ kill his wife? Why would he kill his wife? Here's a guy that could get a lot of women. He could certainly have, he already had a beautiful girlfriend. So the whole thing just didn't add up from the beginning. But the evidence, was pointing pretty strongly at him. Now, I do remember the trial sort of took place I started my first job in 1995, my first professional job in the computer industry. And I can remember what stunned me about this trial was just everybody was talking about it. I didn't see anything like this until 9/11. But in 1995, this was all anybody was talking about. And what was strange was, this, of course, was before the internet. I mean, the internet was around, but it was just in its bare infancy. You didn't have any ability to stream videos or anything like that. It was just really just in its infancy. So really where you were getting your news was on cable news and, newspapers. That was how you did it. And I one thing I do remember, I vividly recall this, in our own building, people would have their radios on. working and listening to the trial. They'd have their radios on, and if or you'd go down to the cafeteria. I remember they had several TVs down there, and people were glued to these TVs watching this stuff. I think it affected worker productivity quite a bit. And then the other thing I remember is, I'd go out with my family, and I remember my grandmother was watching every single minute of this trial. Every minute, every second. So we would go to dinner, and, I hadn't been, she'd bring me up to all the details on what happened this day. Ito did this, or Marcia Clark did this, or Johnny Cochran did this. It was like a replay. So it really was just amazing. It really captured the nation's psyche. The whole thing was almost like a movie reenacted in real life. It really was. Now, of course, OJ had an amazing football career, and that's no understatement. He won the Heisman at USC and was just an unbelievable football player there. He then, of course, transitioned to the NFL. Now, a lot of players, when they make that transition, they fail. Some are what they call draft bust, that dreaded word. Remember Ryan Leaf? He was supposed to be one of the great quarterbacks, and he was a total bust. Not trying to knock on Ryan Leaf, but just saying that did not happen with OJ Simpson. OJ Simpson went on to have an amazing NFL career. And I think if you look at most of the top 5 lists, I'm talking about the top 5 best players in the NFL in the 1970s, I think almost all of them would have OJ Simpson in there. And if they didn't, then they're letting this, I think you got to divorce yourself from all of the stuff that happened in 94 and 95. If we're just talking about best football players in the 1970s, I'd throw Mean Joe Green in there. I would put Roger Staubach. Earl Campbell would probably be close in there, but definitely OJ is in there. And you might put some of these other people other places, but I think OJ Simpson is at the very tippy top. He was just that good. And I think he went to 5 or 6 Pro Bowls in a row. He during that period, averaged over 100 yards a game. Of course, he had the 2,000-yard season, which was pretty amazing because he only had 14 games in those years. Now, granted, they ran a lot more, but still, that's pretty impressive to get 2,000 yards in a season. So OJ was, really at the top of his game, and it was only, I think it was a knee injury in the late 70s that finally slowed him down, and linebackers could finally, if he got through that line of scrimmage, he was pretty much gone. But, they could now track him down. It slowed him down quite a bit, and I think he finished his career up in San Francisco. Now, OJ, I guess I'd even make the point that OJ wasn't just a top 5 NFL player. I would put him as one of the top 5 sports figures in the United States at that time. I don't want to say he was maybe at Michael Jordan's level, but he was pretty well known. And I think that transition he made was even pretty more amazing because OJ was a good-looking guy. He had $1 million smile. He was attractive. He was smart, funny. He was just he had an amazing personality. So it was just like a natural fit that he would go into the entertainment/media business. And so he had a lot of things going on. Of course, the Hertz commercials are what stand out to me whenever you saw those. I can't think of a better spokesperson and a better brand match than OJ and Hertz. It was perfect. Here's OJ running down in the airport to get his car rental. And it really, it was a match made in heaven. It made OJ very wealthy, a lot more wealthier. Let's say, I'm sure he made more money on those Hertz commercials than he did his entire NFL career. I mean, I'm sure he made quite a bit of money off of those. And a lot of people actually knew him for those commercials, didn't even, less about the football. But, oh, yeah, he's that guy that he's in those commercials. Yeah, I know OJ. So he just became even more famous. And, of course, he was on Monday Night Football. He worked with Bob Costas. He was all over the place on NBC. Everybody knew who OJ was. He was just a well-known figure. And like I said, it was even more amazing that he made that relatively easy transition from sports, his sports career into the entertainment industry. Okay, so we're sort of here in Google Earth on Rodeo Drive. And it was here that OJ and Nicole first met back in 1977. And it was at a place or a nightclub called the Daisy. That was the name of it. It no longer exists. I don't even know when it was ripped down, but I would, I'm not even sure. Somebody knows the date, let me know. I would venture to say in the 90s, maybe 80s. Maybe actually now I'm thinking about maybe the late 80s. That would be my guess. But I actually don't even know when it was ripped down. But it was here on Rodeo Drive right in Beverly Hills where Nicole Brown first met. And again, she had a waitress job at the Daisy. Now, I don't think there's any sort of surprise why she chose the Daisy. This was sort of the big time celebrity hangout. Paul Newman was here, and he had to be a member. Actually, you couldn't just walk in there. I couldn't just go in there and say, "Hey, give me a cheeseburger." You actually had to be a member. And so Paul Newman, I believe, was a member. Warren Beatty, I might be getting some of these names wrong. I think Jack Nicholson, Robert Redford, some huge Hollywood stars were coming in here. So I don't think there's any. I think Nicole chose this for a reason, because she wanted to hang out with the Hollywood elite. And if you wanted to hang out with the Hollywood elite, you wanted to work at the Daisy. So she was only 18 years old. So she was right out of high school. And so she comes here, she gets a job. And one day in 1977, OJ Simpson, sort of the tail end of his career, comes in here and lays eyes on Nicole. And there's an instant attraction. And why not? She, if you see those pictures of her, she sort of has that quintessential California girl look. She's blonde hair, beautiful, thin. So of course, it's mutual, right? There's a mutual attraction. Nicole takes a look at OJ, and again, he's a handsome guy. And I'm not even sure. I don't know for sure. I'm not even sure she knew who he was at that point. She might not have. But they start up, I think there was a little bit of a courtship going on there, a little bit of flirting probably in the beginning. And then they start up an affair because, of course, OJ at this time was in fact married. I believe he had 2 kids and sort of on the outs with his wife. I think they were sort of at the tail end of their marriage. So it's here, though, that some red flags first start to appear with OJ. Now, they have interviewed, of course, after the trial, but they've interviewed her during this time. She was, and I don't remember his name offhand, but she was, her roommate was one of her friends from high school. He was male, but they had some similar interests, photography. They had some interests in photography, so they had some mutual interests, and it was purely platonic, though. There was no romantic element to it, but OJ was highly suspicious of it. He didn't like it, and so he demanded that Nicole get her own apartment, and he would pay for it, and he did pay for it. So he put Nicole up in an apartment, and now I don't know if that's I was thinking about it when I saw this guy's interview, and I said, well, let's look at it from OJ's perspective. He's a internationally known person, celebrity, and you think he's going to want to be hanging out with Nicole because he's married, first of all. In those days, that was, still looked down today, but in those days, it was even more looked down upon. So why would he want to, hang around Nicole in front of potentially other people coming in and out of there? So that makes sense why he'd want a private place. But nonetheless, so OJ puts her up in this apartment, and they begin an affair, effectively an affair. And I think it was about 2 years later that OJ divorced his wife, and then it was they didn't need to hide it anymore. She would be seen around town with OJ. Went to all of his events, and everybody started to know who Nicole was. He had no problem taking her around, and she was obviously, like I said, very beautiful. OJ liked to be seen around her, and I'm sure that it was the other way around too. She loved to be seen around town with OJ. It was, and they were a very beautiful couple. And of course, it would last 17 years. We know where this ends up, but 17 years, if you think about that. So they knew each other quite a long time. And there were signs, though, of the domestic abuse. It wasn't really nationally known, but in her diary, I believe the first or second year of their relationship, she described an incident where they were in a hotel and she was beaten so badly she was crawling on the ground. And again, this is alleged, but it's from, we only know this from her. I don't think they filed the police report, but given what we know now, it probably did in fact happen. So there was that. And as of course, they were married roughly 8 years later. in I believe it was 1985. They ended up getting married I think it was in February. And of course, by this time, OJ is removed from football, but he still has a sizable income. So they have houses all over the place. Well, I don't want to say all over the place, but I believe they had a beach house. I mean, they were Simpson was very, very wealthy and had a lot of money coming in. So they married and they had 2 children, but there was still this, some signs that there were, all wasn't perfect. There was trouble in paradise. And there was specifically an incident on New Year's Day, 1989, when Nicole Brown Simpson placed a 911 call, and she was beaten so badly she actually had to get treatment at the hospital. But when the police got there, she was literally running out fearing for her life, telling the cops that OJ's going to kill me. He's going to kill me. And I think that's what she was yelling at him. And this could have turned into a career killer for OJ. But they kind of, OJ was able to sort of handle this, and he got, Nicole to sort of, I think she even called Hertz to downplay the incident because, of course, actually, I'm sorry, you know what? Well, I forgot to do this. Let's zoom in here and ahead, and let's take a look. I'm on Rodeo here for a reason. Let's zoom out here. Here it was. It was right. I don't know if it was this Montclair or in here. It was right in here, though, where this, the Daisy was. So it was right here on Rodeo Drive. This is where they first met. I'm sorry, I wasn't showing you that before, but right here, and you can see this is Rodeo Drive, just beautiful all around here, all these high-end stores. So this is where they first met. So again, yeah, that 1989 incident, it was very bad. I believe it was either 1985, because there was another incident in 1985, the very year they got married, where Mark Furman actually, who played a huge role, of course, one of the lead detectives in the 94 murder trial. But he actually responded to one of these where he had a baseball. Now I think about it, it might not have been the 1989. I can't remember now. But there were 2 incidents that were reported to the police. And in one of those, though, he had a baseball bat. And Mark Furman actually wrote in his book that he had to pull out his baton and threaten OJ with some a little beating of his own if he didn't back down. And I think OJ did. But yeah, so there was this history that was sort of developing, but not well known. Again, these were sort of swept under the rug. And OJ went on and still was able to keep his endorsements, and everything's sort of still going on. But then Nicole was sort of starting to move on in the early 90s. She really started to have enough of OJ's controlling behavior. She felt controlled, and she basically wanted her freedom and didn't want to live with. Basically, she just didn't want to live with OJ anymore. So they were really sort of on the outs. By I would say 1992 was where things started to really fall apart. Nicole moved into her now infamous house in Brentwood. I'm sorry, I think that was a rental. That was a rental where Cato Kalin would actually become friends with her and rent out in a guest house before he actually ended up at OJ's guest house. He was actually there. But she finally filed for divorce in February, and the divorce, I think it finally was, I don't know if it was, I don't think it was finalized until a few months later. But that wasn't the end of it, though. And she really was hoping it would be the end of it, but it really wasn't. There was sort of these still altercations and domestic violence that was taking place. And after the divorce, Simpson was starting to stalk her, and some very creepy stuff going on. She noticed that he was out in the bushes watching her and especially if she had a new boyfriend, he was out there keeping an eye on her. And there was a now very infamous call in October of 1993, that 9/11 call where OJ busted her door down, and that was, I think that was actually leaked to the press very early on after the murder, and so that was a stunner when that call was actually. The press got a hold of that tape. They released it, and I remember myself being shocked hearing this. OJ was just screaming at her, and she was crying, claiming that he was going to kill her or beat her up, and you could just hear OJ in this absolute rage in the background. It was pretty scary, and I think it really shocked the nation to hear this 911 tape that they had kept. So there was that. But probably the most disturbing thing was she had met this guy, and I'm trying to remember his name now. I'm trying to actually remember this guy's name. Oh, yeah, it was Keith Zlomowicz. I'm getting this. He had a weird name. I think it was Keith Zlomowicz. I think that was his name. We're just going to call him Keith. But, he was, I think, one of her early boyfriends after she divorced OJ. And she had actually met him in Aspen in the winter of 1992. They had met while she was still married to OJ, but by this time their relationship was almost over. And so I think they might have exchanged numbers or something. And he was in Aspen, but he worked at a restaurant very close, interestingly, to and we'll get to that, Mezzaluna, which would play a huge role in the murder. It was important in terms of setting, it was the last day she was alive. She was at this restaurant. And of course, we know now that Ron Goldman worked there as a waiter. And by the way, Zlomowicz also worked there. I don't know if he was the owner or if he was the general manager or something. I believe he was like something like that, the general manager. I can't remember exactly. But he was Nicole's boyfriend. And it was here where his testimony was particularly showed a very dark, disturbing side to OJ. He relayed several incidents where one incident he had sex with Nicole, and then OJ, I don't know, it might have been a few days later, came into the house and started basically said, "I saw everything that happened. I saw everything that went down between you two." And that's where Keith started to take a look at OJ, and rightfully so, got very creeped out by this. OJ was very intimidating, and obviously ex-NFL star, but still in really good shape. I mean, he didn't even look. By this time, of course, he's in his 40s. He doesn't even look like it. He's well built. He's a former NFL star. He's a big guy, 6'1", 6'2". So Keith was very intimidated by this, but that wasn't the end of it. OJ, there was an incident where he came into the Mezzaluna, I believe, slammed his fists and yelled at Keith. I don't know exactly what he said, but something to the effect that this is my wife, and screaming at him. So there was that. And an even more disturbing incident where Nicole was with Keith and a few of her friends, and I don't know if it was at Mezzaluna or not. I think it might have been a different restaurant. But anyways, they were all at a table, and OJ walked past them, didn't say a word, sat down facing them, and just stared at them with sort of like a death stare. And so I think shortly thereafter, Nicole and Keith realized that they had to. It's kind of sad in a way. They probably, I don't know if they would have ended up married, but they definitely had developed a relationship, and they seemed, Nicole really genuinely seemed to have liked him. But they just called it off because it was obviously driving OJ insane, and they didn't want to cause any further incidents. So that was sort of the end of the relationship. So again, before the murder itself, there was this history of domestic violence that nobody really knew about OJ. Of course, we had this idea of OJ as sort of this smiling, fun, smart, articulate guy, handsome, ex-NFL superstar. Definitely everybody held him in the high regard. Very few people knew about this dark side to him. And even I don't even remember the 1989 incident. I don't even remember it. And I was 19 years old at the time, but I sure don't even remember it. So it was sort of washed under the rug, like I said. Okay, so we're still hanging around Google Earth, and this is the site of the former Mezzaluna restaurant. Yes, that Mezzaluna restaurant. And if you know anything about the OJ Simpson case, which you probably do, this was the sort of infamous restaurant where Nicole and her family had a last dinner. This was it right here. The very last hours of her life were spent here. This restaurant, it closed, and sort of after the trial, it became such a tourist site. There's so many people coming to look at it. They couldn't conduct business at a restaurant, so it closed. And I think it went through different. I think there was like a coffee shop here at one point, but now it's the Shade Store. That's the name of it. But this is the original structure I mean, this is the original building. It hasn't changed a lot. Obviously, the outside's different. Obviously, the inside, but this pretty much is the same building. And of course, it was here that, like I said, Nicole had her last meal. And of course, the other person in this tragic story, Ron Goldman. He was here as a waiter, worked here as a waiter. And right here is where Nicole's mother, Judith, or Juditha, I think it's Juditha, dropped her glasses. And I've always, I remember reading about that, I always found that, I guess that word fate comes into play because, I know when I lose something and I call a restaurant, usually I get, I don't want to say all the time, but you get kind of you forget something in a restaurant, you call them up and they kind of go, call us back. We'll see if we can find it. We might call you back, maybe, or you actually have to go there. And usually that's what it is. I end up having to go there and retrieve the items. But in this case, when I think it was Nicole's sister that called and said her mother had dropped the glasses, the manager there, and I don't remember her name, but she did quite an extensive search. So extensive, she actually went outside to even take a look. And I believe it probably would have been right around here, right around this curb where she found the glasses. And wow, you think it's just about an amazing set of events that had to occur for Ron Goldman to get to the Bundy address. You just have to think about that. First, they decide to eat here. He's working that night. There's another thing. He's on duty. Second, she has to lose the glasses. And then third, they have to find him. And then fourth, he decides to take him over that night. I mean, you think about all of these circumstances that led up to his tragic death. It's just unbelievable. But this is where it was. And I should point out, by the way, that this was really a hip restaurant. It really was. And it wasn't just Nicole coming here with her friends and family and her boyfriends. No, it was OJ and her visited this restaurant many, many times while they were still an item. So it wasn't just Nicole coming here. It was OJ and her very much enjoyed this restaurant. And now, this restaurant became very important in terms of the timeline, establishing a timeline. I believe she ate here at 6 p.m. They were done about 7 p.m. Then they went to an ice cream store. And I think Nicole's back at her house around 8 p.m. And it's around that time period where, they're calling and trying to get find the lost glasses. Ron, of course, gets them. The manager finds them, gives them to Ron. Ron and Nicole talk. And Ron says, I will deliver them that night, being such a nice guy that he was. And really, all the accounts you hear about Ron are positive. You don't hear anything negative about Ron at all. And that's one of the very tragic aspects of this case. Just wrong place, wrong time, and then all those circumstances that lead up to his death. It's really just so tragic. But yeah, so he promises to take those glasses back to Nicole, and is last seen leaving the restaurant around 9:45. And just little did he know he would have less than an hour left of his life, and Nicole, because they put the prosecution, Marcia Clark, and the detectives would put the time of death between 10:15 p.m. and 10:45 latest, 10:40 latest, 10:45, and that would become central to the case because OJ is unaccounted for during that time. He doesn't have what we call an alibi, or not what we, but what detectives need is an alibi. That's an important thing. So he was unaccounted for, and so that would become very central to the case that they would present to the jury. Okay, so let's take or drive using Google Earth the route from the Mezzaluna to her last address, her last home, of course, 875 Bundy. And you're going to see just how close this is. It was just a very, very short couple-minute drive. Very, very quick to get there. I mean, 5 minutes maybe. I mean, literally, it wouldn't have taken that long. So you'll see how close this was for her and Ron Goldman. Now, Ron Goldman had gone back to his house, changed his clothes because he was going out with somebody else later in the night. Of course, that never happened. But I'm just giving you an idea how close the murder scene was to the Mezzaluna. Now we do know that Nicole had taken her kids to get some ice cream after she finished dining here, which was approximately 7 p.m. I don't actually know. I believe it was a Ben & Jerry's. That I remember, but I don't know where that Ben & Jerry's is, and even if it still exists today. So somebody who's familiar with the area might know that. I don't actually. I do remember it was a Ben & Jerry's, and I do remember that the store manager was interviewed and couldn't remember. He basically said it was so busy that night he couldn't remember who was coming, who was going. He just didn't remember her. And I want to say it was in this area, but again, somebody might know. So we're going to drive from the Mezzaluna to her home. So we're going to come this way. And again, I think it was in here where the ice cream. It's very possible she even walked to the ice cream store and then came in and got her car. So she would have come down here. This is Gorham Avenue, and this will very quickly merge into Bundy. So we're just going to keep going here. We're not at Bundy yet. I will merge into it. But again, I just wanted to give you a sense how close all of this was. It was very, very, very close. So you're coming down here. Maybe it was a little bit longer, and maybe it was about a 5-minute drive. I'm guessing maybe a little bit longer. But you just, because we're kind of, actually it depends on the traffic, but you could get there in minutes. So here's where it merges into Bundy. That actually goes out to Bundy. Actually does go back out onto, I think that's Montana, and then there's another. I think I think it does hit San Vicente too. So if you come down here, we're very close now. We're very close to her house. We're just. I believe it's right up here. Wait a minute. Hold on. Nope, not there. This is where her condo would have been. We're getting close. This is it, right here, 874. And actually, they didn't really, the owners of the house, when they bought it, didn't want this to be a tourist attraction. So they changed. We're right here. I'm sorry. Let me see if I can. Let me see if I can get here. Let's just hit this. I'm having a problem here. I can show you what this looks like. That's it right there, though. Actually, this is what you need to see. So this is the new entrance. They changed it. The old entrance was right where, I think this is a palm tree, that lamppost. That's where the murder scene was, right there. That's where they were killed, right in here. That's actually the new entrance. Now, they changed this because they were tired of, they owned this place, they bought it, they were tired of all the gawkers and it being a tourist attraction. So they changed that. Here's the palm tree. Here's the original, here's the new entrance. And so that's that. That's where the bodies were found by the guy who had found Nicole's dog, which was an Akita just walking around aimlessly with blood on it. And I think he took it into his house initially, but realized there's something going on wrong here. He actually took a big risk. And he followed the dog. The dog basically came back here. He just followed it. And then he discovered the bodies. The 911 call was placed. And that, of course, led to a worldwide event several hours later. It was all over the news. So if we go back here, I think we can find her garage. I think it's right here. So if we enter into here, boy, you got to love Google Earth. So we come here. Okay, let's actually go flip out to this aerial view first. We'll go back down to the street view in a minute. But this is the way we just came. Of course, we came right. This is where we were. This is where the murders were committed. We were just right here. And of course, we came down here on Bundy. We took a left on Dorothy, and then we took a left on this back alleyway, which is what. And by the way, in OJ's book, If I Did It, which I read, he said he took the exact route we just took. He came here down Bundy, took a left onto Dorothy, and then parked in this alleyway right, he said on the far left. I think it would have been right about here. Right around here. He said and this is Nicole's condo right here. These are actually two condos, and they are just separated by a wall, but they are, there's actually two condos. There's a garage here. You'll see this in a moment. There's a garage here. And these are actually, like I said, separated by a wall. But other than that, so she would have lived in this one right here, this side. And OJ says he parked just past that gate in his hypothetical version. And you can also notice, this is one of the reasons I wanted to flip out to this aerial view. You can kind of see, if you were wondering why I can't even see this condo, it's because they let all of these shrubs and trees just overgrow. Obviously everything's overgrown now. These people have these well-manicured lawns. And like I said, they didn't want, the new owners were just sick of the gawkers. I wouldn't even bought the place because, why have all this? I don't know. But anyways, they decided to. Maybe they got. Maybe it was cheaper. I don't know. I assume. But anyway, so yeah, now you can see why you couldn't even see when we were down at that street level view. You couldn't even see the condo. All you saw were these trees, and that's the reason why. And yeah, so let's go ahead and go down to the street view now. And let's go right down here. I think you gotta keep clicking. Thought I did it. Let's try this again. There we go. Okay, so we're down here, and this is the gate. Let's see if I can get a little bit closer here. I can't. Ugh. Sometimes this is like a little. Let's just zoom in. Yeah, I can just zoom in. So this is the gate that OJ came through. And in his hypothetical version, he says that now, I will say that his version sounds somewhat accurate. I mean, it reads like a confession to me. And I will say that some of it sounds pretty accurate. And there were tidbits in it that I didn't even, maybe they came out in the trial, but I certainly don't remember it. One of the things he says that when he came up to this gate, he knew that there was a way to get past it by just giving it a pretty good push. And it would open. So you didn't need to be buzzed in. You could just push it in, and it would open. And he said that he warned Nicole several times to get that fixed. Took a little jab at Nicole. And I guess he's, with the implication there, if Nicole had listened to him, she might still be alive today. Now, you'll notice that this isn't 875 Bundy, and that's because the original owners changed the address for obvious reasons. So that address, 875 address, no longer exists. And mainly because they want to keep the gawkers away. So again, OJ would have parked probably somewhere like right here, or maybe up here. Yeah, I think it might have been up here. Walks down here, pushes this door open, according to his version, and again, it's very similar to the version that the cops, he says the confrontation took place in the courtyard. Now his version is this is where some of his things he says get sketchy. He claims that Nicole came down, took a swing at him, lunged at him, and she fell at the bottom of the stairs where she was found and was unconscious. Now, whether you believe that, I don't know that, but that does match the sort of outline that the cops gave, that she was incapacitated first. I think that's through knife wounds, but OJ does say she regained consciousness a short time later, so she wasn't dead. Ronald Goldman's there, and this is the other part I found very fascinating. OJ says that he went into a karate stance and was sort of circling him. And that actually makes sense, because if memory serves me correctly, Ronald Goldman was a black belt. I believe he was. I don't know what degree he was, but that certainly sort of adds up. And that can certainly add up, because he was a black belt, and so he would have wanted to. Probably saw that OJ had the knife and wanted to keep moving him. I mean, that certainly sounds like a credible account. And then OJ says he blacks out, and next moment or a few moments later, he comes through and he's covered in blood, and both Ron and Nicole are dead, and then he flees the scene. Now, it's interesting how killers, at least in his hypothetical version, they always seem to have this. They always seem to black out. When they actually get down to the dirty deed, they don't seem to remember it. That's interesting. Now, this is another fascinating tidbit from the book. The cops claim that the killer came in the back alleyway here, came out to Dorothy, and took a left. I believe that's what they said. This was very interesting. Took a left, then they went down to Bundy and took a right. OJ's version is very different and more plausible, actually. He says, no, that's not how it happened. And this actually makes sense. If he would have pulled in to this alleyway, he would have been his car would have been facing this way. He says, no, I didn't go that direction. I went this direction in the alleyway. I went all the way up here, and he went up to Montana. And that, to me, actually makes sense, because if you're in a hurry, you think you're really going to turn around the Ford Bronco and go right past this, right, or at least closer to this scene where you just committed a major crime? I don't think so. So he claims he went down this alleyway and went to, this is Montana. He claims he took a left on Montana, and that's how he got away from the murder scene. And like I said, that actually makes more sense to me, how he would have done it. But the cops claim, nope, he went down Dorothy. And that was based off an eyewitness that thought they saw OJ, but they couldn't be sure. But again, the fact that they couldn't be sure leads me to believe that OJ's version is probably a little bit more correct. So that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. If you liked it or want a part 2, I probably will do a part 2. So let me know if you want me to continue on. Thanks again.